I'd like to welcome everybody to our Used Automotive Recyclers Advisory Board meeting. I'd like to call to order our advisory board. Thank you, TDR, for having us again. For those of you on the simulcast YouTube, we'll be sure to talk into the mics more so you can hear us. So, first item on the agenda is our roll call. And do you want to call roll call? You want me to call roll call?
Chad Taormina.
Here.
Bruce Ormond. Byron Farrell.
Here.
Kaylin Thomas.
Here.
Brian Burgess.
Here.
Thank you, Anna. The first thing we'll do is go over our approval of minutes from our May 23rd, 2018 minutes. Can I get approval on those minutes? You second that?
I'll second.
Approval on the minutes from May 23rd, 2018. Next item on the agenda will be our training for advisory board members, and it will be our Open Meetings Act.
Good morning, board members. My name is Mark Gladney. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for the agency. And today we're going to give you a brief primer on the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Public Information Act. If you're interested, you'll find the Open Meetings Act in Chapter 551 of the Government Code. Administrative Procedures Act is in Chapter 2001 of the Government Code, and the Public Information Act is in Chapter 552 of the Government Code. This is not going to be a comprehensive coverage of these three particular pieces of legislation. If you're interested in getting some comprehensive coverage, the Attorney General's office has a video that you can watch. I believe it's about an hour long for open meetings and for the Public Information Act. And afterwards, they give you a nice little certificate. You can suitable for framing. So we won't be doing that here. Of course, there'll be a test afterwards. Yeah. Okay. So the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is to provide open and transparent government. And you're going to hear me talk about transparency throughout this entire presentation. And the Open Meeting Act requires that governmental bodies be open to the public, preceded by public notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting, which we have done with the agenda. And these provisions are mandatory. The Open Meetings Act is mandatory. You must follow it. It's also known as putting sunshine on governmental deliberations so the public actually knows what it is that advisory boards and other governmental bodies are doing. Okay, quorum. Y'all know what quorum is, and basically it's just a majority of the members of the advisory board that's fixed by rule or statute. In this particular case, this advisory board is 5 members, so quorum would be a minimum of 3. Okay? In order for you to take any official action, you must have a quorum here. If you don't have a quorum, you can certainly meet and discuss issues that are posted on the agenda, but you can't take any official action. Okay, deliberation or discussion is just basically an exchange of ideas on, between a quorum of the governmental body or a quorum of a governmental body or another person concerning an issue within the jurisdiction of the governmental body. So if we're here to talk about driver's ed, that's not within your jurisdiction. You're here to talk about issues that are germane to used auto parts recyclers. Okay? That's within your jurisdiction. Okay, so under the Open Meetings Act, a meeting occurs any time that a quorum of you engages in any deliberation or discussion regarding public business over which you have jurisdiction, supervision, or control, or at any time that you take formal action. Okay, as we noted before, the Act requires that advance written notice of the date, time, place, and subject of each meeting be posted. And of course, we do this in the form of an agenda. It's posted 7 days prior to the meeting with the Secretary of State, and it's also on our website. And the the board may not engage in any discussions about a subject that's not included in the agenda. So if it's not in the agenda, you can't discuss it or take any formal action. And it'd be certainly our job, staff's job, to make sure that you don't stray too far off the reservation. If you do, we'll certainly sort of nudge you back. Okay? Now, what about social functions, conventions, and workshops? I mean, there may be situations in which you find yourself outside of the auspices of an advisory board meeting setting, and there may be a quorum of you there. And can you ever meet in such a situation in a convention or a workshop and without violating the Open Meetings Act? And the answer is yes. You're free to engage in conversation that's purely incidental to the event, but you're not to engage in either a discussion about board or committee business or take any formal action. So when you find yourself in areas where there's a quorum of you, these are some things that you need to remember. Be aware of any situation where you might find yourself in a setting in which there's a quorum of you outside of a properly posted meeting. Don't engage in any conversations regarding board business or policy when a quorum is present. And beware of the walking quorum. And what is a walking quorum? Walking quorum is when fewer than a quorum of you engage in discussions about official business and then communicate it to the other members. So, an example would be you're a 5-member board. A quorum is 3. Let's say that 2 of you get together and you start discussing some business that's before the advisory board. You do this informally. And you exchange information and research. But then after the 2 of you meet, one of you goes and communicates that information to a 3rd member. Well, in that case, you've engaged in a walking quorum, and that's a big no-no. So that's what a walking quorum is, and we strongly advise that you do not engage in a walking quorum. And these are the situations in which a walking quorum can occur. The big one that I want you to pay attention to is the last one down here, emails, text messages, and other new technologies. And when we talk about other new technologies, we mean Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those new technologies out there, because you can basically violate the Open Meetings Act if you have a quorum of individuals who follow you on Facebook and you start talking about official business on your Facebook page. The big thing here is don't do that. You know, don't do any of the stuff, okay? Because it can really cause some problems for you. So, very important to avoid these situations. So, here are the best practices. You should not meet in small groups or discuss board business and then communicate that to other members of the board. Do not send emails or text messages to a quorum of members regarding official business, even if you say, hey, I'm going to send these emails or texts individually to each person. Not as a group, but individually with each person. Don't do that. Don't create posts on social media about board business. And do not ask a quorum of members, even on an individual basis, for comments or feedback on committee business. This is known as polling. Again, another big no-no. Okay, as I stated before, the board is limited to discussing the specific items on the agenda. You are not to stray too far. If you do, then you'll probably hear from me or somebody to kind of move back into the topic that's been posted on the agenda. Now, we do have a public comment period. Members of the public are given an opportunity to speak, and the presiding officer can set reasonable limits on the amount of time that a person is allowed to engage in public comment. Usually it's 2 to 3 minutes, but you are not allowed to respond to an issue that's raised during public comment other than to suggest that the item be posted on a future agenda. Okay? So it's not for members of the public who are here. If they come up for public comment, it's not that the board is being, not listening to what it is that you're saying. It's just simply by law, you cannot respond to an item that's not on the current agenda. That's brought up during public comment. Okay, best practices to avoid violating the act on the basis of insufficient notice. Again, limit discussions to the specific agenda items. Avoid discussions regarding specific agenda items to wander off course. Again, we will nudge you if you do. Should not respond to or discuss issues that are raised during public comment, and should specifically identify items for future agenda items and communicate those to TDLR staff. Okay? It wouldn't be much of a law if it didn't have some penalties or remedies associated with it. So if the advisory board engages in any type of actions that are taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act, there are some civil remedies, and some of those civil remedies are mainly injunctive relief, going to a district court and saying, this advisory board took or board or committee took an action that was in violation of the Open Meetings Act, show that to a judge, and a judge can issue a temporary restraining order or later on a temporary injunction. So the actions that you take in violation of the statute are voidable. They're not void when you actually do them, but if somebody takes an action and proves it to a judge that the action was done improperly, then they are voidable. And the court can issue an order voiding whatever formal action that was taken. And there are also criminal penalties. The key word here is knowingly, so members who knowingly conspire to circumvent the Open Meetings Act are subject to misdemeanor criminal penalties, and they can be up to a $500 fine and or 6 months in jail. So that tells you that the legislature takes it quite seriously. They want all deliberations to be done in the light of day. Again, all actions by governmental bodies should be done in sunshine. Okay? Again, avoid communications that involve a quorum of the board about official business outside of a notice meeting. And again, please stay on topic as much as you possibly can. Okay, and if you're interested, these are some of the source areas that you can go and get more information on the Open Meetings Act. You'll note right here the video. Click on this. It'll take you to the video. It's a 1-hour video the Attorney General offers, and as I said, at the end you'll get yourself a certificate. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact the General Counsel's office. The number right there is our main number, and I gave you my personal number on the front of your handout. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Administrative Procedures Act. And here you see the purposes of the Administrative Procedure Act, just basically to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedure. And again, to provide transparency during the rulemaking process. So the Administrative Procedures Act deals with rulemakings. Yeah. And we will be talking about a rule today in one of our later agenda items. And a rule is a statement that's made by a state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy, or describes the procedure or practice requirements of a state agency. So a rule basically interprets a law. The legislature will pass a law. Sometimes they give you all the information that they need. Other times they don't necessarily give you all the information you need, and that's where rules come in. Rules come in to interpret any kind of issues associated with the law. But of course the rule must be relevant to the actual statute. Okay. And a rule can include an amendment or a repeal of a prior rule. And these are the sources for rulemakings. And they can come from the legislature or advisory board work groups, which we had one for this particular group, and I believe it's agenda item G. That rule package is a product of the advisory board work group. It can also come from discussion or staff. And by law, we have a 4-year review of all of our rules, and we call that our Phase 1 review. And basically all that is just simply to determine whether or not the rules are still necessary for the profession that's being regulated. Rule petition, any interested person can submit a petition to a state agency requesting adoption of rule. And any interested person is those items listed there below. And here's the basic process. All rules start with an idea, whether it comes from the board or some other source. The idea, it gets drafted into rule forms. The draft rules are sent to the advisory board for consideration. Once the advisory board approves them, then they're posted and published in the Texas Register. The public's got a 30-day comment period after they're published to say what they like, what they dislike about the rule, maybe offer some alternatives to what's in the rule. The General Counsel's Office will review the comments and recommend rule changes where necessary. We bring it back to you all and we review the comments that are made, and we ask for you to make a recommendation to the Commission on that rule to adopt. And the Commission reviews the filing, the comments, the recommendations, and adopts those rules. The adoption is filed with the Texas Register, and the rules become effective 20 days after the filing with the Texas Register. So that's the life cycle of a rule. Okay, and this is the 4-year rule review process that we talked about just briefly. All the programs are on the 4-year schedule to review. We issue what's known as a notice of intent to review the rule. We publish that in the Texas Register. Once again, there's a 30-day comment period. General Counsel will review the comments, make a recommendation to the Commission, and the Commission will readopt the rule if necessary. Okay? And again, here are the resources that if you want to look up any of this or refer back if you have any questions, these are the sources that you can look up in order to answer any questions about the APA, or you can contact the General Counsel's Office, and we'd be more than happy to give you any information you need. Okay, this is the last one, the Public Information Act. And again, the Public Information Act is intended to allow members of the public information about the affairs of government and the official acts taken by public officials and employees. Again, this is kind of dealing with the sunshine issue that we talked about before. The Act makes all documents, records, and other information relating to official business open to the public. There are some exceptions. We won't get too deep into those, but there are some exceptions. Public information includes any electronic communication that's created, transmitted, received, or maintained on any device if it's connection with official business. And the key word here is any device. And the reason why that's important is because if you're using your own personal devices to conduct official business, if we get an open records request, your personal devices can also be discoverable, because if you've been doing official business on there, a Public Information Act request covers those personal devices. So be very, very careful about how you use your personal devices to do official business for the board. There may be some things that you don't want people getting off your machines. Okay, so if you do receive a public information request, please forward the request to us as soon as possible. If you think it's a request, if you're not entirely sure, just forward it to the General Counsel's Office, and we'll take a look at it and let you know. Okay, and if it is, and they need information, we will contact you, and please provide that information as quickly as possible, because we have about a 10-day window in which to provide that information. We can't ask why somebody wants the records. We can only ask for clarifications. Okay? And below you'll see some of the exceptions to disclosure. Again, not everything is subject to the open records process, but these are just a few of the things that are not required that we produce. Okay, and here we go. These are the source material. Again, there is a video for the open records portion of this. They get so much deeper into the regulations associated with the Open Records Act. And again, it's a 1-hour video, and you will get a certificate after that. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact the General Counsel's office or contact me directly. And that is it. Any questions?
No, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it. And the workshop, again, was very helpful, beneficial. We cleaned up quite a bit, obviously. So thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to our public comments. Any person wishing to address the advisory board, complete
Mr.
a public.
Chairman,
Yes,
Mary
ma'am.
Winston, before we move on, and I may have missed this, for approval of the minutes, I heard motion, second. Was there an actual vote?
I believe so, yes.
Did we vote? Okay. Do we just want to make sure we have that. I have someone on YouTube and they're saying, was there a vote? And I'm
Oh, okay. I
just
got you.
confirming. Okay,
Gotcha.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we'll go on to our next item on the agenda, would be our public comments. Anybody wanting to complete a form or submit anything to our our advisory board staff? I don't think we have anything, do we? No. Okay. All right, next we'll move on and talk about our staff reports and the briefing from staff and discussion.
Good morning, board members. I submitted my licensing statistics for the used auto parts recycler program. The top is the UAPR companies, and then the UAPR employees underneath it. As you can see, the numbers are kind of stagnant. They kind of stay the same. We don't have a big decrease or increase, each year. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those in regards to licensing.
I noticed on our decline on the company license. Anything particular on?
It may be because it's the end of the fiscal year 2018, and this program started in September.
So September
So
would be the date.
that will start in the fiscal
Okay.
year 2019. And that quarterly report wasn't ready yet when I submitted this
Gotcha.
report. And I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Laura Hernandez with the licensing department.
Gotcha. Nothing? No, thank you, Laura. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Next will be our customer service division.
Good morning, board members. Misty Maldonado de Leon. I am the customer service manager for this industry. Your report in front of you's got a few pertinent information I added to the bottom there. I do want to make a correction. It says that our operating hours for the contact center are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's 6 p.m. So 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. is when we take phone calls. Our best times to call for this industry, as you can see, they prefer phone calls. So our best times to call are either early morning or late afternoons to avoid the long wait times. However, we do have a callback feature, and we do offer help at email while they're holding. So it offers them to send an email to help at. Other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory. They do have their email queue for that industry, cs.parts.recycling. We prefer emails because it gives us a little more time to do research and give them a written response. On the landing page, they can sign up for updates for upcoming meetings and important notices. So we recommend them doing that as well. And if you don't have any questions, that's all of my report for today.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you. All right, next up will be our Enforcement Division.
Good morning. In the materials we provided, there are some highlights from the 4 cases we had available this fiscal year. Unlicensed activity and not keeping proper paperwork, and then not paying a fine when it was due. I can talk about any of those. The key statistics, 63 cases were open, 63 were closed or resolved. We had 11 agreed orders, and the penalties, 25,000 assessed, 21,000 or so collected, and you see how that compares to TDLR as a whole. And-
Tony, could you give your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Anthony Reed. I'm a prosecutor in the Enforcement Division.
And these case highlights were from the complaints, calling complaints, or were they just general inspections?
The first one, I'm not sure where that came from. The second one was a department inspection. The third one was a San Antonio police report, police complaint. And the last was an administrative, they noticed the payments weren't being made.
Okay. Anybody have anything? Enforcement? No. Thanks, sir. Appreciate
you.
you. All right, next up will be our Regulatory Program Management Division.
Good morning. I'm Todd Forrester with the Regulatory Program Management Division. On October 5th, we attended the Terra conference that evening. I would like to thank the association and the industry for having us out there. We had a good time. We answered questions that anybody had. Steve Bruno with our Office of Strategic Communications he spoke earlier at the conference, and so they were able to get it out on him first, so it was easier for me. But we had a great time, and we look forward to future meetings. Any questions?
No, thank you for again, because hopefully we had a lot of communication and a lot of questions during that I didn't get a chance to go around too much, but it's important. And again, thank you for giving us the reminders over and over, because those are really beneficial to keep reminding us.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you. All right, next will be our Field Inspections Division.
Good morning, Board. My name is Julianne Crocker. I'm the lead facilitator for field inspections. And in front of you, you have our top violations that we find during our inspections. So there's about 7 on there, not too many, but these are the ones that we've seen most often when we go in for inspections. We've had quite a few personnel changes in our division. Fernando Reyes was promoted to region manager for the South Region. And 2 inspectors, Ulysses Ocio and Juan Munoz, were promoted to liaisons. And then we've had several inspector hirings. We did lose Jorge Vega as an inspector in the San Antonio region, and he's been replaced by James McEatron. And then in the North region, we hired James Turner and Lucretia Wells, and we hired Nina Smith in our East region, which is our Houston area. We do still have one open position in the DFW area. We've conducted interviews, so we're just waiting to make that announcement. And finally, in our reports, you'll see our statistics of how many inspections we've completed. It is on par for where we are in the year. If you have any questions.
No?
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda would be our executive office and our overview.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Brian Francis, Executive Director with TDLR. So I'd received an email just yesterday from Bruce Ormond, who was talking about a football game that took place this weekend. And it's interesting that he's not here today. I specifically came to say hi to him. But I'm going to turn over the presentations for the strategic plan and the legislative appropriations request to Nick Voinis and Carla.
Thank you,
James.
Brian.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Nick Voinis, TDLR Chief of Staff. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate your service as always. We'll give you a little quick rundown on what's been happening around the agency since you last met in May. Over the summer, we completed our strategic plan and legislative appropriations request. Both reports are available for viewing on tdlr.texas.gov. In our strategic plan, there is one initiative that would directly affect the program, and if passed, it would amend the statute to repeal the risk-based inspection requirement in this program. The change would eliminate the threat for double punishment. Carla, do you want to talk a little bit about the LIO?
Sure. So as required by each state agency every 2 years prior to the legislature convening, each agency has to put forward a legislative appropriations request. And so our agency has done so. The session starts January 8th, at which time we will start discussions about the budget. And each agency is asked to put forward what is called exceptional items, which are those requests outside of the normal budget structure that each agency needs. We put forward 4 this time. Our first one was a licensing system. What most of our licensees don't know is that we utilize 9 separate licensing systems for all of our professions that we regulate, and we are requesting some budget authority to create a new system that can encompass all of that information to assist our agency staff and our licensees in processing things quicker. Our second request is for some staff and budget authority for human trafficking. And you might say, well, that's an odd fit for TDLR. However, some of the professions that we license have exposure to human trafficking, and we have the unique ability to go into these establishments and view things that might not be seen by other entities. And we can do so as part of our normal structure. Local police departments have to have a warrant to go into these locations. We go in as part of our inspection process, can notice things that don't look quite right, and report that to the local authorities. So we're requesting some additional resources to be able to do that, and it's part of the governor's initiative and the attorney general's initiative to combat human trafficking in the state. And then finally, we have 2 additional exceptional item requests that try to address the 4% budget cut that was realized by the agency during the 85th legislative process. And we're requesting 2% back, which equates to, I believe, 5 FTEs or full-time equivalents. So that is, in a nutshell, what we're requesting. And again, we begin the process early January, and we won't know until the end of May how that comes out. But you'll be seeing us testify at hearings during the process, and we'll be providing updates to our commissioners in our commission meetings.
And all this is in preparation for coming next month with the next session of the Texas legislature. And TDLR has also been busy in participating in interim legislative hearings. Most recently, our executive director, Brian Francis, testified at a hearing of the House Committee on Licensing and Administrative Procedures. Prior to that, TDLR presented at a joint hearing of the House Committee on Licensing and Administrative Procedures and the House Committee of Business and Industry. We also testified at a joint hearing of the Governor's Budget Office and LBB, as well as hearings of the Senate Business and Commerce Committee, House Natural Resources Committee as well. Also wanted to talk a little bit about our outreach, including your website. Over the past 6 months, your website had 5,117 page views. That's an average of 28 per day. People that accessed your site, 56% of them did so from a desktop compared to 38% from a smartphone and 6% from a tablet. The top most popular reasons for visiting the site were FAQs, rules, forms, the law, and proposed rules. Also want to remind you that we are active on Facebook and Twitter, and if you'd like to keep up with TDLR news and events, to follow us there as well. Your group also has about 6,400 subscribers who receive various email blasts pertaining to this program. And if someone is not receiving those notices but would like to, simply just go to tdlr.texas.gov and subscribe there, and you'll begin to immediately receive those. Also wanted to introduce to you our newest member of the strategic communication team. She's our public information officer, Tila Mange, who's in the back of the room waving at you there. We're really glad to have her. She's hit the ground running, and in a very short period of time, has been a very talented and productive member of our team, and we're proud to have her. That's all I have.
Thank you, Board. Carla and Nick, very useful information, and sounds like a lot going on coming up. Next, we'll get to our discussion and possible recommendation regarding the proposed rules at 16 Texas Administrative Codes.
Good morning. Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel. Agenda item G is going to be for discussion and possible recommendation regarding the proposed rules at 16 Administrative Code, Chapter 87, and a brief discussion of public comments received. This rule package is a product of a workshop that the board put together, and the product of, we had one work group meeting back on April 5th. The proposed rule package amends 9 sections of Chapter 87 and repeals 8. The proposed rules before you today are being implemented to be consistent with the changes made in Chapter 501 of the Texas Transportation Code and Chapter 2309 of the Texas Occupations Code. The proposed rules were published in the Texas Register on October 26th of this year. The public comment period closed on November 26th. The department heard from one commenter during the 30-day comment period. And I'll briefly go through the comments that were made by that commenter. There was only one commenter and made 3 comments. The first comment expressed concerns about subsections 10 through 12 in Rule 87.10. These subsections illustrate the definitions for non-repairable motor vehicle, non-repairable vehicle title, and subject salvage motor vehicle, respectively. The commenter noted that the proposed language is duplicative and that if the language was to be included, it needed to be identical with the definitions that were found in Chapter 501 of the Transportation Code. Basically, our rule package is consistent with what is in Chapter 501 for those areas. We did make a slight change, staff made a slight change to Rule 87.10, dealing with non-repairable motor vehicles, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. It was mainly just simply some grammatical changes that we made to make the definition read a bit more efficiently. The next comment, the commenter commented that salvage vehicle dealer needed to be changed in 87.10 for consistency with other changes in the rule package. The commenter wanted the new rule to include in the definition for salvage vehicle dealer insurance companies, an out-of-state buyer, and a governmental entity. The problem with that particular comment was that in the definition for salvage vehicle dealer, those entities are not included in Chapter 501 of the Transportation Code. And as I noted previously in my presentation, a rule interprets a statute or policy. So the rule has to have statutory underpinnings in order for a rule to actually be proper and legal. And since those three entities are not included in Chapter 501, the definition for salvage vehicle dealer, we cannot include those in the rule package. So that was the problem with that one. And the last comment, the commenter proposed adding the word electronic after the word printed to the definition of salvage vehicle title found in proposed Rule 87.1014 to recognize that the Texas Department of Motor Vehicle issues electronic titles as well as paper ones. Once again, that definition for salvage vehicle title does not include electronic titles. There is a salvage vehicle record of title. That definition recognizes electronic titles, and that is in Chapter 501 of the Transportation Code. But the salvage vehicle title only recognizes printed titles. So once again, we cannot change a rule to match what is not in statute. So it'll have to remain as it is unless or until the legislature decides that they want to include electronic versions of titles into the definition of salvage vehicle title. Now, as I said, staff noticed a slight change that was needed for grammatical purposes in subsection 10 of 87.10, the definition of non-repairable vehicle, and I'd like to turn your attention to that definition right now and propose the following changes to 87.10, subsection 10. Are y'all there? Okay. Non-repairable motor vehicle, I'd like to add the word means a motor vehicle. Delete the word that. Okay, in that first line. And then in subsection A, put the word that in front of is damaged. So it would read that is damaged, wrecked, or burned, etc. Subsection B would be, there'd be no change. Subsection C, I'd like to add the word that to in front of a salvage vehicle dealer. Going to subsection D, I'd like to add the word for in front of which. So it would read for which an owner has surrendered evidence of ownership. And in subsection E, there'd be no change. These are purely being done for grammatical purposes, so it reads better.
Makes sense.
Mark, this is Brian France. Could you read those again just one more time?
Okay.
For us?
For the definition of non-repairable motor vehicle, I'd put the word means a motor vehicle. So the word means would go in front of a motor vehicle. Remove the word that. And then under subsection A, I'd put that is damaged, wrecked or burned, etc. So that would be the first word after subsection A. Subsection B, there would be no change. Subsection C, add the word that in front of a salvage vehicle dealer, so that a salvage vehicle dealer has reported to the DMV, etc. Subsection D, add the word for in front of which, so it read for which an owner has surrendered evidence of ownership, etc. And subsection E, there would be no change.
Thank you.
That would be the only change that staff would suggest on this rule package. We would recommend to the board, we'd ask for a motion that they recommend adoption to the commission of the proposed rule with the aforementioned changes to 87.1010 with an effective date of approximately February 15th of next year. Some additional good news was that the word count for the new rule package, and that's kind of a big thing around here, resulted in a reduction from the previous version of the rules of 908 words.
Mark, if I could add one thing, Carla James, TDLR, happy birthday.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
So on the comments here, did they see this before we cleaned it up, or are they seeing the same thing that we did and what we consolidated on all of our language and words?
Yes, the commenter was contacted and it was discussed, and they were fine with that.
Okay. Anything?
Mark, Brian Francis. So I see under definition for casual sale, we've added that string, a sale to an insurance company, out-of-state buyer, and governmental entity. But we didn't put it in 13D as requested. What's the impact? Does it have the same effect, basically, of what they were desiring?
The Chapter 501 of the Transportation Code made that change to include those three entities.
Sure.
So that is part of the current definition for casual sale, but it is not a part of the
Salvage dealer definition.
the salvage dealer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I did put the word that there. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Steve Burrow was just pointing out something to me. Staff would also like to make a change to B under non-repairable motor vehicle. So we put the word that in front of the word comes. So it would be a non-repairable motor vehicle means a motor vehicle, and then down to B, that comes into the state under a comparable ownership document that indicates the vehicle is non-repairable. So previously I'd said there's no change, we're going to add the word that. And staff would ask for a motion to recommend adoption to the commission of the rule package with the changes proposed.
I move that we recommend these changes to the board as directed in 8710, as presented.
Yep, approved. Second that?
Second.
You approve?
Okay, so it's a unanimous?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. All right, next would be our recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting. Any particular recommendations you might have?
Well, Mark, do you have any particular recommendations for the advisory board to discuss next time? We'll obviously be giving you the normal updates. We'll provide a legislative update as well. So then we ask that this meeting, your next meeting, be scheduled after the legislative session is over so that we can provide you those updates. So that will be sometime after the end of May.
Okay.
And Mary Winston, TDLR, the advisory board staff, Anna will poll you, contact you, and kind of get dates for availability.
Perfect. Well, if we don't have anything else, we can go ahead and adjourn. And again, we appreciate everything, and thank you, TDLR. Meeting's adjourned.